Y'all ready to head off the trails? I'm the Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones, and I'm ready to take you on a mysterious journey right now. We welcome you to Off the Trails right here on the Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel. If you guys haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. We'd really love to have you guys. Shout out to Bumblefoot for that amazing intro music. We really appreciate that. And please follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. You guys can find me at thecryptidhuntress.com. I have all of my shows there and all the events that I'm going to be at, including the Spaced Out Radio Fan Party. That's May the 19th through the 21st in Las Vegas, Nevada at the Golden Nugget. Please come and see us. We're going to be broadcasting live. Get your VIP tickets today and be sure that you send an email to info@spacedoutradio.com if you're going to be getting a VIP ticket so we can add you to the list of swag bags and the VIP party on Friday night. All right, it's going to be amazing. And please come see me, you guys, at Grafton, Illinois at the Journey to Truth Conference. That's May 22nd through the 25th. I'm going to be presenting there on cryptids and remote viewing. It's going to be a good time, a lot of fun, okay? Let's see. Oh, and visit my shop, War Woman Goods. That's on Etsy. And please subscribe to my amazing YouTube channel, The Cryptid Huntress, where I have 2 live shows there a week. Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Over there, I do some really awesome shows. Those things are gaining traction. I'm just saying. They're really good. Okay, it's because I have such amazing guests. That's why. It's my guest. I have the best guest. Okay. I have a fantastic guest here tonight at Spaced Out Radio. I actually have a part of the Spaced Out Radio family here with me tonight. I have Tim Seanor in the studio. And don't forget that right after this show, After Hours has a great program set up for us tonight. And also, before I bring Tim up, I want to thank everybody who showed up at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference yesterday and at the meet and greet on Friday night. You guys are the best. It was so humbling and so special to be able to meet all of these people from all over the state of Georgia and North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida. It was wild. Virginia. You guys, yeah, Bigfoot is really popular, apparently. They like to show themselves these days. So, and it was really interesting. I'm going to talk to Tim about that tonight because people are getting more open to the UFO phenomenon being associated with Bigfoot. So we're going to talk about that tonight after I bring up my guest tonight. All right, you guys. Well, back in July of 2019 on Bainbridge Island in Washington, Tim Seanor and his family were witness to an event involving a Tic Tac UFO, which he documented. All right, Tim has a background in psychology and is a writer with the pen name of David Powers. He has a weekly UFO report, which airs on Spaced Out Radio. I think it's more than just weekly. He does it. He does that quite often here at Spaced Out Radio. So I'm going to bring up to the show tonight, Mr. Tim Senor. Hey, Tim.
Hey. It feels not real. Is it really happening?
This is really happening.
This is so cool. Thanks for the invitation, Jessica.
Of course. Well, you and I, this is not the first time we've met.
Yeah.
Right. I actually was sitting in for Dave about 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I got to hang out with you when you did your UFO report. And that was amazing. I had so much fun talking with you.
That was a great show. You did such a great job.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Dave better watch out because every time he needs to go somewhere, I am willing and ready to substitute for him anytime he needs me.
Hey, let me know when you're ready for a UFO report over here.
Oh my gosh. Hey, if we can extend the hours of my show,
right?
This hour goes by so fast. You know, maybe we should start doing a little UFO report every now and then over here at the Cryptid Hunters Off the Trail show. Yeah. Well, and I think that it's important to start bridging the divide between the cryptid world and UFOs, Tim. Yeah, because in my experience, from day one in the field, doing Bigfoot field research, I had UFO encounters from the jump, literally. Wow. And I saw yesterday at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference that a lot of other experiencers with Bigfoot have had the same phenomenon happen. Have you heard that before? Are you even into Bigfoot at all?
I'm coming in from the other angle where I started out having something happen in the sky that made me wonder if there's more. And then I started to do research and find that definitely in the same areas that UFOs are seen, there's
Mm-hmm.
Bigfoot encounters in those same exact areas. And so my start off point in research was Oregon, right? And so obviously there's a ton of Bigfoot out here and
Mm-hmm.
the same reports in the same areas, but obviously I was focused on UFO, but I definitely did find that connection.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I was actually pretty shocked too when people were so open to it. And I think a lot of the people, the speakers at the conference yesterday, we had like Robin Haynes McCrae there. She and I are very much on the same level of the Bigfoots being having a supernatural element to them. And, you know, like I said, like my team from the very beginning we've seen a UFO connection, an ET connection, even with the Bigfoots, and even with other cryptids. It's not just Bigfoot. Whenever there's high strangeness or a portal, if there's usually a lot of different types of cryptids and things going on there.
Right. And
So
isn't there also the orb connection with Bigfoot and also UFO?
absolutely. I was going to bring that up tonight. We have more orbs than we have just about anything out in the field. We
Wow.
have orbs that chase us around the woods. Okay.
What?
Yeah, we have orbs that just show up and they look like the moon, but it's not the moon. Okay. Yeah, we have all sorts of different types of orbs, and I've even seen orbs that turned into aliens. So I don't know. It's we live in a very strange world.
We
We really
do.
do.
We do. And
Yeah.
you gotta pay attention, right? And hopefully keep your camera handy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I've actually seen videos of orbs. When I say orbs that turn into aliens, I've not actually seen an orb turn into an alien with my own eyes, but I saw it on a video that a friend of mine has from a CCTV camera in someone's backyard.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Every time I see him, I ask him to pull that video out so I can see it. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds incredible. And I
yeah.
mean, I've seen some pretty amazing orb stuff myself, so anything is possible when it comes to that phenomenon.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you and your family had quite an experience. Back in 2019, you guys experienced a Tic Tac UFO. It's so funny. Every time I say Tic Tac, it's so easy to try to say TikTok, because everybody's doing TikTok these days.
Right.
But the Tic Tac experience, and I had not heard of it before. Of course, I'm here in the cryptid world, so I don't really follow UFO encounters and stuff as much. But everybody I know has heard of this. Okay,
Yeah.
and so this is kind of a big deal. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about it, or a
Yeah.
lot about it?
The Bainbridge Island Tic Tac event is
Mm-hmm.
actually Googleable. You can Google it. It took place about 10 miles as the crow flies from Banger Island military base on Bainbridge Island in Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just off the Puget Sound, and in for example, so that military base Banger is actually a nuclear sub base. And
Oh,
so it's got a massive military presence around the area. And so
wow.
yeah, and so it was definitely one of those things that I mean, I'd never seen anything like that before. My family, this was actually 9 family members that witnessed it. We were all there to celebrate my birthday, which was going to be the next day.
That was a
And
birthday gift.
yeah, and none of us were ever UFO people. My mother and father both PhD'd and working within the science community. My sister and her family are all either in the military or becoming pilots. And then that includes her children. And then my children are all college kids or, some kind of working professional in the tech world. So, and then I had some little ones that were there as well. But on this particular day, we were down at a place where we could get to the beach and have access to parts of the ocean floor that normally wouldn't be because it was actually the lowest tide of the year that day. And so that's the whole reason that my family decided to just walk down from the house, or I'm sorry, they drove down because my mom and dad were going. And it's really close to the house. It's basically the house is on a cliff and the beach is just down at the base of the cliffs below their house. And so they're really familiar with the skies there. They have big windows that overlook this area. Very familiar with the skies here. There, rather. And so there was kind of high mixed clouds that day. So there were some pretty high clouds, but it was pretty much typical July weather for the Seattle area there.
Wow. Yeah, it was a nice little birthday gift you got that day. Now, you eventually looked up to the sky. You saw something that was off. Now, are you the first person who noticed this little shimmery thing in the sky, or were you just looking at the clouds?
So as it happens, most of my family was already down at the beach. It's called Rockaway Beach, and they were already down there, and they'd been down there for most of the day. The only people that were left at the house was my middle-aged son. By middle, I mean he was 13 at the time within my group of kids of 5. He had stayed home with my wife, and so the rest of the family were down there. So I had driven down after we prepared lunch. I drove my truck down and parked there at Rockaway and walked down towards my mom and dad, who were seated at a bench overlooking the Puget Sound, as the rest of the family made their way up the beach towards them. And I was waving to my family as my mom kind of looked over past my shoulder and she said, "Did you hear that?" And she was kind of looking up into the sky, and I was like, "No, I didn't hear anything." And I kind of looked to where she was pointing, and I didn't see anything at the time. And at the same moment that she said she heard something, my sister's son pointed up into the sky and said, "Oh, look, a saucer." And he used
Ooh.
that exact word. And so the entire family was like looking up. And sure enough, at that point, there was an about the size of a dime, if you held your hand out stretched, was the perfect shape of what looked like a saucer just sitting static in the sky. And
Whoa.
we were all just staring at this thing. And I reached for my phone and I was like, "Oh man, I don't have my phone on me." So I dashed back to my truck and grabbed my cell phone out of my truck and ran back, which was about a 50-meter dash total, 25 meters there and back. And I ran right back to the spot where my family was and poised my camera up. And I actually didn't see the object at the time, but I photographed the cloud that I had seen it near. And so at that time, I actually did see it a little bit further off in the distance and fired off another photograph. And if you want, I did send you some photos, and you are welcome to bring those
Yes.
up along there. So the first photograph would be correlating to that first photo I took. But once I fired off this second one, okay, so this is photo 1, and I've just, you see 3 squares there where I've just taken this image. Now you can see in the bottom left over the western Seattle there, a very faint little gray shape. Now that's really what I saw when I came back and I fired off the photograph. And then I've just brought it in a little bit closer with some zooming and cropping. And then that third box on the lower left has some color enhancement to kind of bring up some of the contrast and definition of the object at the time. So if you skip to photo 2, that's where I noticed that there was something that was kind of buzzing around it that looked like a sparkle at the time. And that sparkle would be at 12 o'clock and then 6 around the object. And then suddenly at 3 o'clock, but it was always kind of pointing in the same direction, if you will, towards the object. And that little sparkle almost looked like an electrical spark or an arc welder's spark. And later I would realize that that little spark, when it stopped and the light caught it just right, was actually a little white cigar. So some people have said that this photograph looks like a bird or something else. Now that's totally potentially possible, that I'm not capturing the actual object in some of these photos, because let me explain how this thing moved.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't fly so much as disappear and reappear, but in rapid succession. So it would still make a straight line somewhere, but you would only see it once in a while. And I did get to experience that, because right after this photograph, my father called to me over my shoulder as he was seated, or maybe he was standing at this point, and he said, "Well, what's this down here now?" And he was pointing further down the Puget Sound, and he was remarking on what he was looking at. If you want to shift to number 3, that object you can see kind of moving. In some frames, in rapid succession, there are no objects whatsoever in the frame at all. And then in this frame, I managed to capture what I'd seen. And this is it in motion, or what I would consider motion, because it would disappear from this frame. And then if you go to the next number 4 slide, it would not be in the frame anywhere whatsoever, and then suddenly reappear further on down western Seattle. Number 5, here we are. It's kind of in motion, and in the enhancement in the bottom left, you can see a really faint white object that is trailing behind what I'm calling the saucer.
I can see it.
And that is the the white Tic Tac, we're calling it now, but I was calling it a little white cigar at the time, because you could kind of see it with your naked eye a little bit.
I can see it. Wow.
So all of a sudden, these objects just stopped. And this is where the story gets a little bit bizarre. And I just tell listeners to suspend their disbelief and just let me get through the story, and then ask me the questions, because it's a little bit hard to recount. So if you go to frame 6, the objects just stopped, and that little white cigar-shaped object fired what we could all see with our naked eye was a beam of light that kind of started out at the cigar and then just emanated slowly out, and then formed what it almost looked like a white net opening, but it opened into a perfect cube of light. And this is it in process of opening. And so in the next frame, and at this point, the saucer was nowhere to be seen. The gray object I'm calling a saucer was nowhere to be seen in this frame. But if you go to frame 7, the next slide, that is the box completely open.
Wow.
And what was taking place here may have been maybe 10 to 30 seconds after it had completely opened. And you can see something either entering or exiting through what we could only say the light dimmed for a moment to our naked eye. And in the photograph, we can kind of see that here visually too. And later there were more objects than we'd started with, so we're assuming that something maybe came out of there. We can get into that later, but it's important to express at this time, when we'd heard that laser thing and the net box, whatever portal, if you want to call it that, opening, there was another sound. I'm saying this was the first time I heard a sound. I heard a sound at that time. And later, when we compared it, it was very comparable to what my mother had initially heard. And we can get into that sound here a little bit later. But, and we can also get into the rest of the photographs here later.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting at this point was that from photo 1 to the last photo, it was 2.5 minutes. And once that portal opened, and I got MUFON to help me with this, it stayed absolutely static in the air. That box was open for almost 1.5 minutes. And all of my family members were staring into it. and time just went by. In fact, it was hard to break your gaze. I just lifted my phone and just took photos. I wasn't actually looking at my phone to like actually gauge
Wow.
whether I was capturing it. It was mesmerizing, and I didn't know that that duration had taken place, that long of a period had taken place, until I reviewed the metadata and looked at the photographs and realized how long had gone by.
Wow.
This
That
doesn't
is a
seem
long
like
time,
such a big
actually.
deal for just objects in the sky that are questionable and all that. And none of this would be such a big deal. But it did have like this massive impact on the entire family. It had us all convinced that we were seeing something else at this point. We did go over the photographs as a family, on an iPad, and we talked about things, and we really scrutinized things. And you have to understand also, at the time, none of us were thinking UFOs or anything otherworldly. It was just bizarre, and I was trying to capture it, and it was absolutely mesmerizing. And we'll get into the rest of the sighting here shortly, but please, this is a good place to stop if you want to ask some questions, because it
I
is
have a
hard to.
million. Yeah. I mean, so did someone say cube? Okay. Or
Yeah.
portal? Okay. So in my experience with my team, we have actually experienced a cube of sorts that showed up in the Meadow project research that we do. We are basically a Bigfoot field research team, but we do way more than just Bigfoot. It's ETs, portals, light beings, missing time, whatever happens, we're out there observing and researching. And we do have this infamous cube that showed up in the field one night. And it was a cube, much like what you describe as what was in the air. And just recently, David Politis had put out a movie called the UFO Connection, Missing 411 or something. I don't know the exact name, but there's a gentleman in there that describes another cube that he
Yeah.
thought was a spacecraft, I believe. So now the cube that we experienced in the field, it was only visible with a thermal imaging camera and FLIR.
Wow.
And the two people that were sent to go check it out disappeared when they walked up to it. Their heat signatures disappeared, and then they reappeared as they walked away from it. And then the cube actually shrunk down, and then it moved. It disappeared. Okay,
That's
and
amazing.
yeah, so we call that a portal because we don't know what else to call it.
Yeah.
That the environment changed when they walked up to it, and so we just considered that to be a portal, and so it's so interesting. The first time I heard your story about this, I immediately made that connection because you had mentioned portal and cube.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
this was, you were there and you filmed this with the, it's so mind-blowing, isn't it?
it is
I
mind
mean, and
blowing.
so
I was
conceptually it's kind of hard to say out loud. And
yes,
you know, this was really hard for me, my family, to kind of wrap our heads around. And that's why I filed reports, right? I filed
with
reports with
MUFON.
agencies that I would hope would do the research. And so they have contacts and they're able to make sure it had nothing to do with the military base. It had nothing to do with the airports nearby. It wasn't just a banner being pulled by a plane that tricked my eye. It
Right.
wasn't, it couldn't have been, it literally didn't move. And their research showed that. And there were winds. It should, so there are a lot of factors that proved this out not to be mundane. And it took MUFON a while to work with me. I got to say, MUFON did such a great job. I was really quickly passed up to the directors of 2 states, and they worked hand in hand, hand in glove. They were very tender with me also, because it
Really?
wasn't easy for me. And it's still not easy for me, to be completely honest, because I'm a very rational person. And when I hear other people's stories, it's easy to discount. But when you live through something, and you experience it, then it becomes a little bit different, right? And I wish this for
Absolutely.
everyone on this topic, because no matter how skeptical you are, you deserve an experience that makes you scratch your head at least once in your life. And this was mine. Nine
Yeah.
nine family members still. And at some point when we get back to the actual sighting portion of this, I will get into some details that are a little more convincing to me personally, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
absolutely. We're going to talk about all that. Now, I do want to tell you that we work with members and directors actually of MUFON that come out to the meadow. We call it the Skinwalker Ranch of the South. And we have, like I said, we have so much activity there. We have brought Katie Page out there, who comes on Spaced Out Radio a bit. She's the head of Colorado MUFON,
That's
and
great.
she's a good friend of mine. I love Katie.
Did she have an
She's
experience out there?
yeah, we've had plenty. When she came out there with us, we had several interesting experiences. Yes,
Wow.
I can't say it was totally UFO related, but it was experiences. We had some encounters of some invisible forces out there.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get when you go
Interesting.
out, especially with my team. But yeah, there's 100% this connection with the UFOs. It's such a big connection that some of the members of my team have gotten certified with MUFON and things like that. But I've experienced UFOs many, many times. I have never actually reported them to MUFON or anybody. But of course, I'm on a research team. I wonder how many people experience UFOs and never report them.
Oh yeah.
And how important is it to report those to organizations like MUFON, do you think?
I think you're going to get a different answer from whoever you ask. I personally support reporting because otherwise it's just going to stay with your family and friends, and the world deserves to hear your story. And so just share it, and don't worry about who hears it. If you want to stay anonymous, do so. But I think that the reports need to get out, and especially if you're somebody in aviation or somebody that's seen something that could potentially affect our pilots, because UFOs interact with stuff in the air. So let's consider
Yeah.
that. And I'm not talking about UAP stuff that's real mundane garbage. I'm talking about the ethereal potential, UFO stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe I should start reporting these things. I mean, I have
Definitely.
UFOs. I have UFOs that fly over my house, and I've
You
I've, I've
gotta.
learned the difference between satellites and UFOs because I know a lot of things that are flying around the sky are mistaken for UAPs or UFOs. I stick to I call them UFOs, Tim. I don't call them UAPs, but
Good. Good.
yeah,
And there's
I have a hard time switching over.
plenty of satellite trackers and
Yeah.
things that you can use that will
Okay.
determine what you're looking at, and it's just an app away that'll weed out all the garbage. You can look at aviation flight paths and be like, oh, it was just a plane, and that's great. Or you can like check your satellite imagery stuff and be like, oh, it was just satellite stuff. But whatever you do, report something that doesn't meet the criteria of mundane. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So, I've made the connection with in my teams, a lot of people in the Bigfoot field. We have made the connection between UFOs and Bigfoot. Now, there are a lot of not a lot of organizations, let's just say like the two main ones for Bigfoot and for UFOs, they don't like combining the two. Okay. Like,
Right.
I'm just going to say MUFON is not super excited about making reports with Bigfoots in them. Okay.
Yeah.
And groups like, let's just say BFRO, perhaps, I don't know, they don't like, perhaps, from what I've been told, I'm not a part of that organization, but I've been told they don't like, perhaps even including UFOs in their reports. But I don't know because I haven't seen a whole lot of those reports that have UFOs in them. But people are reporting these things. And so I really enjoy the fact that you and I can kind of bridge this divide tonight from the UFO world and the Bigfoot community because in my experience, it's connected. So
Yeah.
I'm
And
excited about that a little bit.
yeah, you're doing the right thing doing research. And that is absolutely the way forward on any topic in the phenomenal world, right? Need more research.
Absolutely. Well, I think we should all keep an open mind about this stuff because none of us know totally what's going on here. But when we're able to put our ideas together and our personal experiences together, and our research as a team. And I know you do extensive research. You actually have a mobile van or something, right? that you
Yeah.
carry you ride around in and do a lot
Yeah.
of research.
Yep.
I wish I wish you could
We
bring it down to the meadow sometime. That would be awesome.
I would love to. In fact, that's
Yeah.
exactly what we do. We
Okay.
take a mobile lab that was basically a large RV, and it's a bus basically, that we tore apart and revamped with tech. And there's no room to sleep on this thing anymore. It's just all like monitors and microscopes and gizmos, if you will. But you can still stream out of the back of it. We've got Starlink hooked up. And so we have a thing where we actually stream live and allow viewers to help us view the skies in the hotspots. So it is absolutely important to bridge that gap. And you know what? If I came across something that proved out one way or another, you gotta believe I'd be reporting on it and dishing out the evidence on it, because that's the whole point. And if I came across Bigfoot or an orb, I would still want somewhere to report it. And I wish agencies were a little more flexible on the kind of reports they accepted. I know they're not trying to step on each other's toes, but still, yeah.
But there should be some sort of a database, in my opinion, just to, even if it's like, oh, well, we have extra, like the extra category, or something.
The other box.
The other, the other, or, unexplained, supernatural, potentially supernatural. I don't know. I think it's all supernatural. But yeah, I think that there should be some but that's with having an open mind, and like a lot of people were saying at the Bigfoot conference yesterday, it's so good to have an open mind, and just even if you don't believe that Bigfoots can be interdimensional or go in and out of portals or whatever, just have an open mind about it, and you don't discount someone's experience, because you don't believe it until you actually experience these things, just like with the UFOs.
Yeah, and hopefully the idea behind a lab that's mobile, going to a hotspot, taking samples of the soil, finding out what's actually around. Is there an underground aquifer taking place? Well, get a soil sample, pulverize it, take a look. So you can't always expect to look up to get the answers you're looking for. Sometimes you have to look down. And so getting a really good idea, running an RF meter, back and forth in a grid pattern in the area you're at, so that if you get a spike, it's real. Bringing real scientific method into it, I feel, is massively important. And so when we go somewhere, we bring the lab. We don't just have telescopes looking up, and we're not always just recording the skies. We're looking down. We're making sure that the information we're gathering is real, so that if we did decide to call this real data at some point, we could be like, hey, look, this is real data, and here's why. We've done the background information check to make sure that the data we're now getting is real and valid. Same reason for you. I'm sure if you were using an IR camera, you made sure that it was functioning properly before you called your portal a portal. And that's the same thing. I had an experience with my IR stuff where I had a perfect X across that lingered above my research area, which was supposed to be controlled airspace. A screaming X of red fire above us. And it lingered for 45 minutes in a windy area. And we were like, what are we getting? What is this? We had some weird activity happening around us at the same time. I still, to this day, don't know what it is, but that's evidence, right? That's something.
Absolutely. You don't discount any of that. Now, was that through your thermals or something? Or what kind of device were you seeing that through?
A FLIR camera.
A FLIR?
Yeah.
Interesting, because that's how my team picked up on the cube. Now, I got to tell you, I actually left the meadow that afternoon because I had a small child at home. So I was at home experiencing orbs floating around my son in my living room that night, while my team was out there filming the cube. So I was not actually there when that happened. But in the cube, the only way they could see this thing was through their FLIR, okay, and thermal imaging cameras. And it actually had X's on each side of it.
Yeah. FLIR is interesting. It's an anomalous camera. You can't always, it's reading heat. So it's just another spectrum to consider data. I don't consider it totally evidence of anything phenomenal, because potentially, it could be a plane trail that lingered, even though it was supposedly controlled airspace in Utah. At a mysterious spot. We can probably guess where I was. That's the sort of thing you just, you can consider potentially. And it takes us back to the Bainbridge Island incident, that my family witnessed, because that was one of those moments where you're like, is my eye deceiving me? Is my phone, what I have on my tablet here, that evidence, is that
Mm-hmm.
telling the story properly? Like, could that just be a seagull up there, but it's
Yep.
not actually the saucer that I saw? Like, is your data telling the story properly?
Right.
And so it's a tough phenomena to try to get into as far as research goes, let's say.
I think you are a thorough researcher, though, and you cross all your T's and dot all your I's, Tim. I'm super impressed with your
Thank
methods
you.
and knowing that you have a mobile van going around searching out UFOs and stuff. That's
Yeah.
amazing. It's like one of those weather vans, kind of, that goes out and chases tornadoes,
It's
except you're
just, it's
chasing UFOs.
exactly like that. Actually, it's exactly like that. But you
Okay,
just
I'm
have to
bringing you to
change
the
the
meadow
pattern.
then. Okay, you have an open invite to come meet us out there anytime. Okay,
I love
it's
it.
undisclosed location, but I'll give you the coordinates. Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
there.
if you
I'm
can make it.
100% there.
Okay.
I'll bring the
It's a
team.
long drive though. We're down in the south down here.
Well,
So,
you know what? We are kind of, we have a mobile version also that travels in these big black cases that are sitting next to me.
oh
And
yeah?
we're actually going to Hawaii. So we can
Ooh.
go anywhere, if I can
Okay.
fly my gear there.
You can fly your gear down here. We'll
Yeah.
we'll we'll entertain you down here.
We're
Absolutely.
going to
We
be
will host
sitting on
you.
top of a volcano looking for UFOs this summer.
Oh my gosh, how amazing. Now, do you have a team that goes with you?
I do. I do. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name my team, but I do. It's a tight team of four people.
Okay.
But they're all definitely people that have a solid background in science that I bring with me, or they're like tech, science or tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm super excited to hear about your adventures. I mean, I didn't even know you did that until tonight. So,
I'm full of
um,
surprises. Well,
well, I know.
yeah,
Well, I just
I
met
don't
you
talk about it.
recently.
Yeah, and I actually don't
Absolutely.
talk about it at all publicly.
Oh,
It's
you
just one of
don't? Did
those.
I just expose you?
No,
Just
no. I
kidding.
mean, when
Okay.
asked, I talk about it,
I'm
but it's
sorry.
just, I'm not trying to be a resource for the topic. I just have questions, and I'm like vigorously investigating with people that are like-minded. We're not looking for resources. We're just very motivated. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally makes sense. Listen, I'm so
Yeah.
motivated. I was out in the field this weekend. I was speaking at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference, of course, and I decided to go do some research in the UFO field. Okay, we actually have,
Love it.
where we do our Bigfoot research, we have a field that is super, super active in addition to all the other places we research. But after we did it was one weekend of pretty intense phenomenon was going on there. We had UFOs flying all over the place one weekend. And so now that is forever known as UFO field. I went there with a good friend of mine. And a lot of times, like the last time I went, which was a couple of months ago, there were orange orbs in the field, in the tree line, and turned into what I believe was a Bigfoot. Something, I saw a flash of an orb and went through the trees. And then as soon as the light disappeared, I heard a huge growling huff. And it wasn't a bear. It
I,
sounded
I
like it could have been
I
a bear,
wonder
but
if
it
the
wasn't.
phenomenon materializes according to intention, or like,
Yeah.
like you put it out there, so that's kind of what it was. But if I was out there, maybe I would have formed an ET or something. Do you wonder if intention plays into even the Bigfoot
Yes.
stuff?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. And I also think that it could be, there's natural portals out there. I believe
Right.
that we have lots of natural portals, and that's on the ground, in the sky, in the air, wherever. I've done a good bit of research on those. I've actually remote viewed Earth's natural portals before, as you know, I do blind targets. I didn't know what they were when I was remote viewing it because I just had a set of number coordinates. Okay. And I was tasked that target and I came up with the most amazing data. And it took me to the sun, Tim. There were UFOs, there were ships coming in and out of the sun and connecting to the earth through natural portals that had been weaponized, actually. So
Wow.
that was my target. Yeah, but there are, and I believe like the ancients, I believe that cryptids, I believe UFOs, whoever's controlling these UFOs, they know about these natural portals, obviously, and they utilize them.
I wonder if humans turned off our capabilities to sense where those are, and that like
Yes,
once in
I
a while
think
we
so.
get lucky.
Well, we get
Um,
lucky when we just happen upon them, or
right.
think about all the missing persons clusters that are
Yeah.
documented in the David Paulides Missing
We were
411
just talking
series.
about that today over on the social dig.
Yeah,
Yeah. I was
I
on a
think that
show
there's a
right before this.
connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you on that. Um,
Okay. So I'm
yeah.
not crazy, huh?
No, well, I mean, I didn't think about this as possible until my father, who passed away just this past summer, experienced this with me, right?
Hmm.
And before he passed, we talked about this sort of thing. And after he thought initially that maybe we were witnessing something that was secret or
Okay.
holographic or something was tricking the eye, he really
Yeah.
tried to explain it away. But eventually he started to talk deeper about the potential of having, portals exist. And he didn't call it a portal. Oh, I can't remember. I'll remember what he called it. A vortex. He called it a
Oh,
vortex.
wow. I've
And
experienced those. Okay.
well, yeah, and I think that was his interpretation. And I found that just so perfect because it was in his words and it does explain it. And my dad and I actually witnessed something when I was a young man. I was just before I left home in upstate New York, which was a massive pink spiral in the sky that turned out to
Oh,
be a Chinese rocket, but it was still beautiful. And we saw it
really?
together. I brought him out, we saw it together. And then we saw this again together, and it wasn't so easy to explain. And so, if you actually want to bring up, I think, photo 7, I can just pick up right where we left off. How do you
Yes,
feel about that?
absolutely. Let's do that.
Because
Okay,
it's
hold
a
on. Let me count down. One,
pretty,
two, three, four, five, six. Okay, I don't know if this is the right one, but I'm going to click on this one
let's
and
see.
tell me this is the right one. If not, I'll
That's
go
great.
up.
That's
Does
where
that
we
be good?
left off.
Okay, perfect.
Because this is where something either entered or exited out of that, what we're calling a portal at this point.
Okay.
Um, and so this is a photo that I actually didn't do anything except just draw my camera up and fire. So it's not perfectly centered. But I literally looked down at the rest of my family while I was taking this photo, and they were all staring up into this little light in the sky, all of
Mm-hmm.
us. And if you go to the next photo, number 8,
Mm-hmm.
that is where this thing is just completely wide open.
Wow.
And you can
It looks like a
see
cube.
it
For
looks
real.
like
Okay.
just so bright and so obvious. And the fact that part of why I initially came out into the public with this, with my photos, was I was hoping somebody else had seen this because it's over a populated part of the world. Now, if in this photo you can actually see to the very upper right the white cigar shaped object, so if you're looking in the large square or
Mm-hmm.
even in the big photo, up just to the, let's call it the 2 o'clock from the square, still below the cloud, there's a very faint white shape. And you can see that there's actually
I
the
see it.
cigar shape is still there in this
Yes,
photo.
it's tiny, but I see it.
It's tiny, but it's
Yeah.
there. So let's flip to slide number 9. And so exactly what we had seen for this cube to open, it retracted back up into that tiny little white cigar and then just did this incredible swoop and disappeared and then reappeared further on down the Puget Sound with a cluster of other objects. So this is actually a photo of that little white cigar below
Yes.
it,
Uh-huh.
retracting it and zipping off, which all occurred
Oh, wow.
in a blink of an eye. And I just managed to snap off a photograph during this.
I'm impressed by your photographs. Okay, not
Lucky,
everybody has
pure
this
luck.
type of a progression of photographs
Yeah.
of something like this. I've never seen anything like this before,
Yeah,
actually.
and to the skeptics like myself that are
Mm-hmm.
considering this maybe a plane towing something in the sky and it was just the angle that made it look to linger for so long, planes do not have retractable canopies that they drag for banners. They actually have a hook system where the sign is on the ground and they come down with the plane and hook it and sweep it up off into the sky. So there are no retractable mechanisms to, you know, this is absolutely anomalous. everywhere I
Mm-hmm.
reported came back to me that this was in the 5% of anomalous UFO.
Wow.
And so this photo, pure luck. This is all luck that I
Yeah.
managed to get this. In
Hey, well,
number
the right person got it. That was you. And look what you're doing today with your mobile van. I mean,
right. A lot
uh,
of people have said
wow.
that to me that
Has this changed your life though? I mean, did it
yeah,
really put you on a course of where you are today?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
If
It
you
was
want to
meant to
shoot
be.
to slide number 10, that is where we can see a object that is sort of like a pyramid shaped object, and you can see it very clearly in the enhancement. This was one of the objects I was able to capture that
Wow.
wasn't in any of my before photos that did exist in the after. And so for people that are aware of the date, this was the 5th of July. 10 days later on the same coast, the Omaha experienced what they experienced, and now Jeremy Corbell came out with pyramid shaped things glistening in the sky. It was obviously
Oh,
bokeh. They weren't necessarily pyramids, right? But
yeah.
it was just when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh. And that's actually
Wow.
when I came out publicly with my photos, because I was like, no one had said it was a pyramid yet anywhere. And
Yeah.
I had this image and I was like, could this be related? It's 10 days apart on the same coast, almost exactly 1,000 miles away, by the way.
Whoa.
Just some of the pieces were falling together. So I was like, I got to come out with that fact, whether it's relevant or not. Now, of course, we now know that what they were seeing was probably stars in the Omaha and things like that. But again, they were filming something that was anomalous. They may not have captured what they were trying to film. We don't know. But it is part of what motivated me to come out. And did it change my life? Massively. I didn't believe in this stuff.
I know, right?
This wasn't real. And to be honest, I don't believe in it still. I'm not a believer. I'm somebody that is looking to prove it to myself in a deeper fashion with more evidence. I'm very much a foot in both worlds. I appreciate everyone's information, but I'm by no stretch convinced, even by my own evidence, which is hard to say out loud, even after experiencing. I have dreams that are still from this almost daily,
Wow.
and it's linked to it somehow. I have other family members that lose sleep over this still. So there's something to it that we aren't willing to accept,
Right.
at this point, but I'm working towards it. And this lab, obviously,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it an obsession because I only do it in my absolute free time. I do still have a very comfortable life, and my children don't say UFO. They have no idea that they experienced it. They may have dreams that they can't explain, but they don't talk about UFOs. They don't know that I have a lab dedicated to it. They just know I'm a filmmaker. It's pretty normal
Yeah.
for me to do stuff for a month at a time somewhere out in the field. So
Yeah, that's actually a great thing. I mean, I've had people contact me. See, my son. That's why I don't take my son out to my research field when we're doing real research and stuff. I've taken him out there one time during the day, but it can be dangerous for children when the parents are messing with the things that you and I deal with, like cryptids and UFOs. And I've had people contact me who were thought it was fun to call in UFOs and didn't really know what they were doing, and the kids were being affected by that and stuff. So it's good for us to kind of shelter the kids from these things until they get old enough to understand it, I guess. But
I totally agree with that.
yeah,
And
that's what I think.
there was so much weirdness surrounding this sighting, and it's just a sighting. It wasn't an experience. I wasn't abducted. It was just something that I'd seen. But the thing that's so interesting is immediately after this group of objects winged south and were out of sight, we all just snapped right back into what we were doing before without
That's
even really
weird,
talking
right?
about it, got into our vehicles and went home. But along the way, I photographed a bush for no reason, the hub well of my vehicle. It wasn't, I didn't just have like my phone, like I purposefully took photographs that are just not something I would normally photograph. Um, Immediately after it, I felt
Okay.
kind of in a haze. And to be honest, it was almost painful to recall. And I don't know if this is something that happens with other people, but there are certain portions that to this day, it feels like I almost shouldn't be talking about, or like I should forget. There's portions of it that are incredibly uncomfortable for me to talk about. And I don't know why that is. You know, it could be absolutely my own consciousness grappling with
Probably.
it, but I
Yeah.
have family members going through this very same thing. Now, my background is in psychology, so I'm trying to be analytical, but at some point, you have to grapple with this could be something else. And that's
Right.
when you're like, should I call Gary Nolan and talk to him about this, you know?
Hmm.
Because it just seems like potentially just seeing something a quarter mile away can have an effect on us as human beings. Not just the experience, you know, of hey, wow, I saw something weird. I mean, something, a connection or something that lingers with us. I have a new understanding, a new obsession, a new hobby now, all from an instant of 2.5 minutes in my life. Um, I've been asked to do all kinds of shows and speak on all kinds of things that I never would have even considered. I would have
Right.
been embarrassed to talk on this, honestly, before this experience, if I'd been asked to talk seriously on it. And even with UAP making headlines as they are, as potential real things in the sky, I would still be embarrassed to talk on it because it's not on the forefront of reality, quote unquote. But now I
Right.
think reality is kind of changing. And I think we're starting to see UAP starting to prove to people UFOs are potentially real. So now it's
Yeah.
a conversation that we should all be having.
Absolutely. I've made another connection here. With the UFO phenomenon and the Bigfooting, Sasquatch, cryptid research. You know, it's almost like when you have an experience that's so profound, you don't realize how profound these things are at the moment, and somehow it's almost like you want to shut it down, like your subconscious, your higher self, or something. I don't know what it is. It's almost like you just want to kind of shut it down, and people will forget about it.
It's
It's
like
just like
PTSD.
it is, and
Yeah.
it's also, or it could be something else, because you know I've had
Yeah.
experiences up close and personal with ETs, and a lot of people that have those, especially during abductions, they forget about it. Their memories are wiped or something.
An
It's either the memories
interaction
are
of some
wiped.
sort?
Do what?
Are you
I'm sorry.
insinuating like an interaction on their part trying
Inter-
to block the
yes,
experience from our consciousness?
I think so. I think it could be that, but I'm not sure. And so when we have super crazy activity out in the field, for instance, when we have Sasquatch coming into our base camp and screaming at us or doing whatever, that's just outrageously wild, right? Guess what we do? We all decide to go to sleep
Right.
instead of going out and staying up all night and trying to figure out what's going on. We just all go to bed.
I
We go
almost
to our
felt like
tents and go to sleep.
I felt like a dumbing down almost. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't
Right.
even put the experience into words for a long time. I did a Martin Willis show where it was really hard to articulate the entire experience. And I felt that it took practice for me even to be able to recount it properly. I haven't even told you about the sound yet. Like there's parts that just get blocked. The sound was
Yeah.
intense. That sound when I was watching that beam open sounded like a massive roll of saran wrap being unrolled and stretched, like the sound of plastic being stretched, but in a metallic way. If you could stretch aluminum foil, that's what it sounded like. And that's also what my mother had described it as. And my mother also described that little sparkle around the saucer as a hummingbird around a flower, the way it was always pointed towards the flower, the same way this sparkle or this white cigar was always pointing in a direction towards that saucer. And they moved
Really.
together until they broke apart. And I didn't see the saucer at all. It was out of my visual. I don't even know what. But all I saw was that white cigar fire that beam and that box open that had my intention and what I was photographing. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
you know, and
Well,
that sound
wow.
I am equating to that portal opening because at the
Hmm.
same time as I saw that cube open is when I heard that aluminum foil metallic stretchy sound.
You
Same
heard that.
description my mom gave. Yeah. So the assumption is that my mom had heard that open. Perhaps that portal had opened and that ship, whatever it was, or saucer, came out of it. You know, because my mom had heard that same sound which drew our attention to the sky initially, and we had the experience. It's all very theoretical at that point, but that's the discussion that we had back at the dinner table, looking on our tablet at the photographs that I had. And we were sitting around, and my dad brought a map up, and we figured out probably where it was and the distance. And then we looked at the weather, we looked at flight patterns, and at that point we decided to file the report. And at that point, we didn't know what to do. About a year later, I just independently interviewed them all to get their account before they forgot it. But there was also a video I shot during it that is absolute nonsense.
You have a video too? Someone in the chat was asking if you had a video.
I did shoot video that MUFON didn't consider good enough evidence. It was me scrambling to try and get it in focus. And then
that sounds typical with any kind of paranormal recording. Right?
Yeah, and I realized that my photographs were doing much more justice in HD.
Nice.
So
well, you did a great job on that. Yeah. Oh, okay. I have one last question before we go tonight, because we're almost out of time, Tim.
Oh,
this
man,
is
it
wild.
flies.
And I also want before I bring up the question, there is a metallic sound that people hear quite often right before a Dogman experience or some kind of cryptid experience, usually Dogman. And so we'll talk about that connection next time, because I would love for you to come back, and we're going to talk some more about this. We're going to, for sure. Okay. Please.
Okay.
Now, is there where is the MUFON report? Is that accessible where people can actually go read that?
Oh man, we're gonna have to put it in your show notes, but I do have that MUFON report number for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll get that out then. We'll disseminate that and put it out there, because I know the audience would love to see that. I've had several people ask if you had
sure.
or if it's confidential. So
no, it's not at all confidential. I would love to share it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is amazing. Tim, thank you so much for being here today with me. You do an amazing job with the UFO report with Dave Scott, and it's always a pleasure seeing you and hanging out with you.
Yeah, we get topical.
Yeah, you get topical. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we get topical.
That sounds funny.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well,
thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Do you have any words of advice for the viewers that if they encounter a UFO, do you recommend they take pictures of it or what?
Yeah, and there's a great camera that's pretty affordable, made by Psionics. That is a multi-spectrum camera, super easy to operate, and it's considered one of the best little handy cams to have. That's quick, and you can capture what you're viewing. That's what I keep close.
All right. Well, I need one of those for Bigfooting probably too.
Definitely.
So, yeah, and all these critters we got chasing us around in the woods, or actually we chase them. So, yeah, that is awesome. Tim, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you for spending your Sunday evening here at Spaced Out Radio with us. Okay.
I've had a blast. Thank you so much for the invite, and I'll see you again soon for sure.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you next time, Tim. Thank you. Okay, bye. All right, y'all, that was awesome. Don't forget that right after this show, we have After Hours with an amazing program set up for you guys. I'm going to see you guys next time on Off the Trails. But until then, I'm the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones. I'm headed off the trails. Thank y'all so much for being here. I missed y'all last night on my show, but y'all, I checked out. I can't talk. Go check out After Hours from last night. I joined Marquise on there, and we had a blast. You can hear all about my Bigfoot experience over the weekend if you guys will go check that out. I'm going to talk about that next time on Off the Trails. Y'all have a good night. Bye.